All right. My name is Gabriel Fairman, and I'm the founder and CEO of BureauWorks. And today I'm going to talk about a few red flags and key points when you're looking at buying a potential translation management system, also known as a TMS. Well, number one, I would talk about pricing. And pricing is something very delicate when you talk about a TMS because TMSs are priced very differently. Some TMSs are priced by seats, other are priced by word limits, and how these word limits and seats are structured can vary immensely. So you can have variants in seats, for instance. You can have concurrent seats, you can have active seats, you can have seats in general. Same thing with words and processed words. You can have some TMSs will charge for words that are stored in the translation memory. Other TMSs will charge for words that are processed. How these words are processed also gets counted differently, which adds an immense level of complexity to just understanding price. And in my understanding, when you look at a TMS, having a really good grasp around the price of that TMS is very, very important because that could make that entire decision go underwater within a very short amount of time if the premises are wrong. So for instance, let's say you don't have a lot of content processed, but you do have a fairly large translation memory and your TMS is charged based on the translation memory size as part of that overall pricing. You may end up paying very steep pricing for actually very low usage, for instance. Or let's say you have a scenario where you have lots of users but not that much content, so on. So it's very important to look at a TMS and not just look at the pricing table, but actually know that based on your use case, what is that going to cost? So maybe that's going to take you a few extra interactions with the TMS provider, maybe with their sales team, but it's definitely very worthwhile to have a very clear idea of the price. Whatever energy you spend in that component will pay off big time in the years to come. And I think that takes me to point two, which is migrating to a TMS is a fairly hands-on and burdensome initiative. So most people, when they migrate to TMS, their expectation is to be there for at least 2 years, maybe more, hopefully more. But the fact is that it's a very important decision to consider, right? So when you look at pricing, it's not just looking at pricing at that given moment, but looking at pricing and how it progresses throughout the years. What kind of growth expectations do you have? Do you expect to add more languages? Do you expect to add more content? Do you expect to add different kinds of content and so on? So that's all very important for choosing a TMS. Now, the second point about looking at a TMS is the kinds of files that it can handle. And not just the kinds of files that it can handle, but in what capacity can it handle those files. So for instance, let's say you talk about a TMS that's really, really good with YAML files and JSON files, for instance, but maybe it's not going to handle docx files or pptx files. Maybe that seems fine at the very beginning given your use case, but use cases tend to expand over time. That's just a natural tendency of localization. Eventually people will want to translate a pptx file, or eventually people will want to translate an IDML file. And it's really important to look at a TMS that can handle a very wide range of files so that you have that edit flexibility moving forward, right? Even if you don't need it now, you may need it later. And I think that's a very important concept about TMS, is understanding that whatever snapshot you see right now of reality may look very different from now 12 months down the road, 24 months down the road. And I know that we don't have a crystal ball, but it's fairly a simple process to just expand on current concepts, expand on certain file types, expand on use case when making that decision. Now, the third item in my opinion when examining, if I were to look at the TMS, so we've looked at licensing, we've looked at file types. Now I would actually start to look at the ease of use of that TMS. How easy is it to use? How intuitive is it? How modern is the interface? That's going to play a really big factor, right? Typically, a TMS is going to require onboarding lots of different kinds of people onto the software, right? You're talking about onboarding translators, onboarding project managers, onboarding stakeholders, reviewers, brand people, developers. So a lot of different people with a lot of different hats are going to be using this TMS. And if your TMS doesn't look fresh, doesn't look up to date, doesn't look crisp and modern, chances are that people won't adopt it as much as you would like them to. So again, these things maybe don't seem initially as such a big thing, but they eventually do become a very big thing. Another very big thing is how easy is it for people to access this? Is this something that's on-prem? Is it cloud-based? Is it something that's desktop? Anything in this, in my opinion, this is again just my opinion, but in this day and time, anything that's not cloud-based presents an additional barrier for the user, whether it's downloading files, whether it's accessing a specific server. Those are all additional barriers that most users are not willing to go through. So making sure that it's cloud-based, in my opinion, is a huge step as far as making a good decision when it comes to your TMS. Security, talking about cloud-based, right? Badges are very important, like looking at SOC 2 Type 2, for instance. That's a very important seal of certification seal that ensures a certain level of security and governance. However, beyond the security, there are certain things that are very important to check for. For instance, making sure that the files are encrypted while transmitted using standards of TLS 1.2, for instance, or later. Making sure that files are encrypted at rest. Making sure that your data is yours and it can be deleted at any time if you choose to leave that TMS. Making sure that the portability of that data is there for you, so that, let's say, if you do decide to export that content as a TBX file, for instance, for glossaries, or TMX files for translation memories, that they're structured in a way that you're actually going to be able to leverage that content when you go somewhere else. There are many TMSs, this is something very important to look at, that will deliberately structure files in a way so that they decrease the compatibility across other systems in a way to create kind of like a moat or some kind of wall from users that will prevent users from leaving that given TMS into another. Doesn't seem like a very positive approach, but there are TMSs that do that, and it's important to be aware of that because that can create a very undesired outcome should you decide to change that TMS for another one. So the portability aspect is very important, right? You get into something knowing that eventually you can get out of it fairly easily if necessary. Now, the fourth thing that I would say about a TMS, and this is maybe very difficult to assess, but it's how fast is that TMS continuing to develop, right? Is it a product that has reached its maturity and is no longer anymore being sought for as something special and not being currently added to it as far as features, as far as depth, as far as experience? Or is this TMS something that's remaining fresh, that's looking at something that's always trying to be a little bit better than it was previously? Again, this is something very, very difficult to assess, particularly if you're just shopping around for a TMS. But in my opinion, when you look at software, right, very important to choose software that is growing with you, software that is evolving with you, particularly in this given day and time where technology is changing so quickly due to large language models, AI, and all of that. Very important to work with software that is really not just fresh, but moving forward in a fast pace. So overall, when you look at the TMS, there are a lot of challenges and at even detecting these red flags because they're not also always super clear. But in my opinion, the key thing revolves around trying to A, have a very clear wrap around the pricing. B, understanding that your current moment is not your future moment. The same applies to the TMS. Their current moment is not their future moment. Trying to project towards the future moment. Making sure that you have an ease in and an ease out. Checking the boxes from a security perspective. Getting beyond the marketing fluff. That's something huge, right? So getting beyond all the buzzwords and the keywords and actually experiencing the software for yourself. Not being able to trial a software, in my opinion, is a big miss. So making sure that you take advantage of however many days every TMS are going to offer you as far as trialing and piloting and testing out different scenarios. Very important, because when you contextualize these things, it becomes a lot easier to understand exactly what they can offer you and how they can benefit your company beyond keywords. And I would say, last but not least, making sure when you look at the TMS that they are going to really own your success. So what kind of support do they offer? What kind of solution architecture do they offer? Are they just handing you off onto a off-the-shelf kind of software and just expecting you to deal with it? Or are they people who are actually feeling like they are very responsible for your overall happiness and success using their product. So the culture of the company, the flavor, the quickness of the responses, the quality of those responses that you're getting both from solution architecture and responses, those are all very important aspects to look at when examining a TMS. And I think, in short, I think it comes down to really the more you make a decision based on intuition and based on actual real hands-on experience, the higher the chances are that you'll be making a good decision. And the more you can actually try these different softwares and examine the pros and cons of these different solutions, the greater the chances that this comparison process will allow you to spot these big differences and the software that's most suited for your needs. So thank you very much for watching. This is Gabriel Fairman. Thank you. Remember to like and subscribe if you like this video. Till next time. Bye-bye.